Hi, welcome back. So we're finishing up chapter 1 of Kuchemann, and I recommend going read it. The couple things that he described, you're taking a look at speeds in general, and marriage distances, and the need for speed and why air. There's actually a really great plot on talking about how other modes of transportations have sort of a stiction problem to go fast. And really, air travel is actually the only thing that can move humans at this speed. There's no way you could build a rail fast enough, given just friction on rails, to go at the same speed as an aircraft. So something really powerful about that. And then I wanted to show a couple graphs. So the one, he had a graph of population city pairs versus distance. And so I actually went and pulled recent data, and because I didn't want to have to do all the compilations for forever. This is actually every city in the world over 1 million people. So there's about 770 cities. And it's not just like the actual city, it's kind of the city area, so it is counting for sort of that metropolitan distance. And what is kind of city pairs looking like? And so because I didn't capture all of the cities less than 1,000, you expect the short end here of the curve to be not quite right. But this is actually pretty impressive. And again, I wanted to do this based on the circumference of the Earth to kind of be consistent with his other plots. But just for reference, what's actually really interesting to see the couple humps there. So the full circumference of the Earth is 40,000 kilometers, so half would be 20,000 kilometers. And this hump here really represents sort of that continental distances. This first hump here you're actually seeing is really that kind of Atlantic distance. And so that's, sort of 4,000 kilometers, right? It's got 3,000 miles, 3,500 miles. That is that Atlantic distance. And then here, this is about that 8,000 kilometers, 5,000 miles. You start picking up that sort of near Pacific distances, kind of the short way across the Pacific up north. So kind of tying in North America to the Pacific. And then this larger one here is then sort of that extended long range. So you start tying in Australia and Singapore and things like that. So it's really powerful to kind of take a look and see like, hey, yes, absolutely there is power behind this. And then when you really then kind of overlay, well, right now we're making these flights at 12 hours, 17 hours. And the power of doing that in less time is actually really really attractive. And so where I wanted to then finish is the most recent studies that we have that would be, if Kuchemann was to rewrite this book now, would certainly include some of the more studies that have been done. And so I'm going to highlight one set of study here that was done by Deloitte. And what's nice here is actually it's all the same kind of people doing the same kind of studies, but there's a NASA study, there's a Deloitte study, there's a SAIC study. And this is good because the SpaceWorks company out of Atlanta, John Olds and John Bradford, they're the ones who kind of doing the study. And if you're here at Venus, we have this inside, and on Confluence you can go look at these studies. But I wanted to highlight a couple of key things. This is a very detailed study. And the first one is a very simple graph, but just, what is that speed doing for you? And so certainly if you look at, say, 5,000 miles, the Venus was born as we were, in our minds, was born as we were stationed in Japan in 2018. And so for us, it's always been about crossing the Pacific. It's always been about that, San Francisco to Tokyo route. And that's about 5,000 miles. And you can see there, LA to Tokyo, lining it up. So subsonically right now, yes, like I hate that flight because it takes 12 hours. And so certainly if you can do that on Mach 2, it's way better, Mach 3, Mach 4. And so you already kind of see here, there's sort of a lower limit here on what is speed actually doing for you. Now, this is cruise speed, and so you have to, there's some assumptions here of what is it actually taking to get up to speed. And certainly, the original days of Venus, we were actually building a boost glide vehicle, and so it was going to go to Mach 9 and then glide. And that was really, that's an equivalent, because we spent a long time sort of decelerating, that's an equivalent timeline to about Mach 6 cruise. Maybe even Mach 5 cruise, if you were kind of to hold that equivalent. And so you're seeing here, though, I want to kind of highlight, is there big knob between Mach 4, Mach 5, Mach 6? Not necessarily. This will come back in as we sort of have to think through what speeds does this work at, what markets do we see, and then certainly the more interesting tug is going to be a military vehicle may actually want to be faster than Mach 5 for survivability reasons or mission reasons. Well, that actually may be different than what a commercial market might be willing to pay for, right? Kind of leading the witness here. If there's actually a big cost jump to go to say Mach 4 to Mach 5, or if there's a big range hit because all of a sudden that vehicle's heavier because of thermal loading, that'll be interesting for us to kind of take a look at. Okay. The next graph is this is really a nice one that I only see in this study, which is, hey, we're always kind of looking at commercial first class, but you can't ignore the private market, right? There's actually a certain amount of people that is flying privately, and this is kind of that graph of total net worth, and what are we seeing in terms of private jet ownership? What are people willing to pay for having a private jet? And you can see here, billionaires, and we have a couple on our investment team. Like, yeah, they're going to go buy, absolutely, they're going to go buy their own jet. Not a problem. This might be like a Falcon 9 or a Gulfstream. Like this, they're going to go do that so that it's way cheaper, way more convenient. And certainly you have sort of these bands here that sort of talk about the affordability, right? How much would somebody be willing to pay for? And you can kind of see the Mach 2 supersonic desired price if you kind of have that show up. But it's going to be important for us to not only kind of take a look at that commercial first class, but to have an idea of this more private, whether that's, you see here, whether it's an on-demand charter or a kind of a jet card membership, or it's full-on private. This is going to be a market that certainly we wouldn't want to ignore. Okay, and then the SpaceWorks team gets into the Rosetta model. And so I want to highlight just a couple plots from that. And you really have to dig into a lot of assumptions, and certainly, as we go through this, we're going to come back and kind of build our own way that we're thinking through this. But this is good to kind of reference other people, so it's not always Venus drinking her own Kool-Aid type of a thing. And so this shows versus different design speeds what could be your rate of return for an aircraft with these different cruise numbers at 50 passenger cruise. So the first one here is you see that the real high speeds at kind of Mach 5.25, Mach 5.5, you're starting to see a dip, but there's not too much of a dip when you're looking at Mach 3, Mach 4, even kind of the initial Mach 5. Now you're going to see the study sort of highlight, hey, we think maybe Mach 2 is an interesting condition, and certainly it is, and God bless Boom, who's chasing Mach 1.7, or a couple of these other supersonic companies chasing that Mach 2. We'll sort of keep our mind on here, what does that Mach 4, Mach 5, Mach 6 look like? So rate of return says, hey, there's a good rate of return there. And then in terms of what are you capturing, and again, this is we even saw this in the last chart, sort of again, at that 3,500 miles, you're capturing the majority of those North Transatlantic, the New York to London type of a thing. At about 4,500, you start capturing those Trans-Pacifics, and then if you can get all the way out to 6,500, you've now really kind of captured the major Asian routes, right? That's the fully, I can go LA to Singapore type of a thing. Okay, so it's good to know. And then this is a good kind of discussion point that they go into, right? They do have some estimates on costs and IRRs and all this, but this is a good one to say, hey, but what else is going on? There's a good list, good description. So they highlight, oh, come on, bring it back. There we go, it's back. They would highlight, hey, sonic boom, this is going to be an issue. Well, remember, and we'll show some other data on this, above about 100,000 feet, we have data from Apollo and Space Shuttle, goodness, one way again, that show you that a human can't even hear sound barriers above that altitude. Like, it's inaudible to our ears. And we have the X-59 program that's going to go in and kind of talk about shaping. And we had, through the FAA reauthorization, that we're hoping Congress here passes, that the draft is all good. They've been a little bit busy. But if it passes, there's language in there that asks NASA, hey, in NASA, FAA in conjunction with NASA and other experts, write down the altitude above which there's no speed limit. Because basically, if they decide that sound level of a car door thump, that's what they're talking about now, is enough, then honestly, that's going to make it 85,000, 90,000 feet. As any aircraft above that would be just a car door thump, and you would not even hear it. So when we talk about Mach 4, 110,000 feet, that's great. We could take off from LA, do our climb over the Pacific, and then be 90,000 feet climbing to 110,000 feet as we're then crossing over to New York and be there in 35 minutes. So those overland routes, for us, sonic boom restrictions, we would eliminate it by just honestly going faster and higher. It becomes really this thing that gets rid of that barrier. Aircraft certification, yes, there's a barrier there. The FAA has to go through and write, hey, what is the laws? What does it look like? Now, they did a rewrite of small aircraft, things weighing under 19,000 pounds. That's called Part 23. Part 25 is the larger transport category aircraft. And so, one of the ideas we've had here at Venus is, well, hey, we could totally go build a 19,000 pound version of this. It might only go 1,500 miles, but that might connect the entire eastern seaboard, even get you, flights to Puerto Rico and U.S. Virgin Islands. So even then, it's kind of flag to flag. It could be a really interesting way to hit an initial market. Okay. The last one they highlight here is landing, takeoff, and noise as a significant barrier. Yes, we have dreams of completely removing the jet engine and going to this RDRE-driven ramjet. It will be very key as we, get our engine up and running over the next while to understand the acoustics behind that and to understand if that's going to be a barrier for us and what can we do to sort of work through that. If we have to put on a turbine to get past that, that's going to be annoying. But that one remains for us. But we were really pleasantly surprised when we did the RDRE and the duct. Really pleasantly surprised on how quiet that was compared to our standard rocket engine tests. Now, honestly, compared to when we hear the F-16s take off in afterburners here in Arlington. Okay. Emissions. Yes, people are going to care about emissions. As we kind of talked the last time, hydrogen isn't going to get you anywhere. It's not going to work. So, really, from an emissions point of view, the biggest thing we could say is our rocket engine can burn SAF, no problem. Right? SAF is basically just kerosene. Jet engines, changing a fuel like that in a jet engine, the combustor is a lot more sensitive, and then there's all these other things you're dealing with when you have air, things like NOx and things like that. That we'll have to play through now that we're talking about an air-breathing ramjet. But at least from a rocket engine point of view, it's not an issue. And then export controls, yes, that will be a significant challenge. Now we do know under the AUKUS framework that the U.S. is kind of broadening what it means to be ITAR. In fact, Japan's even kind of joining this conversation as well. And so UK, it's AUKUS, Australia, UK, US, and then Japan is kind of tying on. So there's a framework where those countries are going to open up. So that would give you that Atlantic route, that would give you that Pacific route. Of course, then from Tokyo, Australia is just another 5,000 miles. So if you can get US to Tokyo, you can go Tokyo to Australia. So even combining that gives a significant, absolutely significant market that gives you a foothold. So this is, this report was in 2021. Massive progress towards on that one for the next little while. And then the rest of them are labeled here as minor challenges. So I'm not going to walk through any of the rest of them. And then sort of their TLDR on this, when they looked at all the opportunities, they kind of highlighted, hey, there really is something here in Mach 2. Now, make the note, Mach 2 provides the largest Mach opportunity, but business cases can close between Mach 2 and 5.5. So I'm actually we're going to hang our hat here on Mach 5, Mach 4 to Mach 5. It's because it is the one that gives that Pacific route, that home for dinner. You can get there in 2 hours. It can turn into a business trip. So there's a jump in here that I'm not sure their model is accounting for the uptick that would happen is if you can get key people over there and back, right? Because right now, when you have those kind of distances, honestly, what you're doing is you're sending someone to go there for a week. So if it's an engineer that needs to go to a factory, they're going for a week. As if it's a business person that needs to go there, you're going there for a week. I've done the Japan trip in 36 hours. I've done it in 3 days. And I did it just kind of for Navy. I had to get back here to Venus. But honestly, if you're doing it as a business trip, like you're going to go for a couple of days. At that Mach 4 speed, it turns it into where you really could just go for that key face-to-face meeting. So we'll fully believe that there's something there that I don't think their model is quite capturing at those distances in the jump up. Okay. Optimal aircraft size, you can see there, something in the 20s. Sure, I believe, there's a Reynolds number aspect when we get into it. I think there's something to be said for keeping at least your wings laminar from a heat point of view, which would drive your aircraft to be a little bit smaller. Range, fully agreed here that 5,000, capturing that at least the sort of short Asian route is massively important. And then that says fare. Yeah, so, yes, for sure. At $8,000, people would go do this. But that would be, right now you have to understand that people are already paying, first class prices to Asia sits around 12,000. That's first class. That's that's not just lay flat. That's like you're a king. I've seen first class price or just business class prices go for $10,000. So this is a little skewed because all those business class people are already paying $10,000. They would be willing to pay more. So this is kind of the economy scale, right? If your costs you $3,000 to get to Japan right now, would you be willing to pay 2.5x? The answer is yes. All right, so a little skewed there, and then aircraft price. So showing here. Somewhere in that 170 million, and so we've targeted if we were at Mach 4 at hitting 200 million, I think it's going to be just fine. So anyways, good studies, good TLDR. I agree with it. Again, we're going to target that Mach 4. There is a market, and I don't think they're quite capturing that jump that happens at Mach 4 for that Trans-Pacific market. Okay, and then here's kind of the nice detail, kind of get out of the way here in terms of optimized market by opportunity. And so let's highlight that Mach 4. Hey, what is that at Mach 4? So 23 passengers, 5,000 miles. Yep. Average ticket price. Again, that's actually already less than what you're paying for business class. So I disagree with their math there. Market size, pretty good. So estimated market value of 14 billion. That's a per year number. Yeah, there is absolutely something here. Okay, that's it. So, we have other studies there listed in our internal on Confluence, whether it's, this is the Deloitte study, there's an SAIC study, there's a Bryce study, and some NASA studies. So it's been nice to be able to point to other markets and highlight. And again, I'll just kind of conclude that there's absolutely something here in that kind of Mach 4 and Mach 6 range. Leading the witness a little bit, we're going to see that at Mach 4, the materials challenges are actually a lot more reasonable, and that there's going to be a jump here between Mach 4 and Mach 5. When we think about our DoD opportunities, it's going to be Mach 5 plus because of survivability. And so really, what we want to think of ourselves about doing is, hey, Venus, we are off to go make a commercial Mach 4 vehicle. DoD, you are welcome to pay for the upgrade. So we'll get into it, and we'll see you next time for Chapter 2.